Hey, Dr. Katzenstein, thank you for being with me today. Could you please introduce yourself? Tell me what is your area of expertise, your title if you have one. If you can spell out your name, tell us how to pronounce it correctly. And if you have a preferred title that you like us to use, and what would you like us to call you?
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for having me today. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. My name is Dr. Jennifer Katzenstein, Jennifer Katzenstein. I have a PhD in clinical psychology, and my specialty is in pediatric neuropsychology, meaning the way that our brains and behavior interact and how our cognitive functioning is what we utilize, how we get educated every day in our lives. I am the co-director of the Center for Behavioral Health and director of psychology, neuropsychology, and social work at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
Well, thank you for being with us today. And this is so important, this chat, because I think it was a couple of weeks ago in our editorial meeting, this question came up of school readiness. I mean, I personally have never heard this term before. And I became deeply interested in it. And I know that we're a little after the fact in the sense that their school has started in a lot of places or is about to start. But the main question, I believe it came from a viewer, probably as most of our questions come from, and is, should you hold your child back if they are on the age cusp for kindergarten? Before we go into that, what does school readiness mean, and why is it such a controversial, sometimes difficult thing to answer?
Yeah. Well, school readiness is difficult to answer because it varies in its definition and what expectations are by parents, by educators, by schools, by psychologists and other providers. For me as a parent, it also varies from me as a professional, right? As a parent, I am an expert in my child. I know him the best. But oftentimes parents think that school readiness might mean they're ready to sit in the seat, follow every direction perfectly, and be ready for that traditional learning that I think of as a child, where you sat in your seat and you listened to the teacher, and there wasn't really a lot of room for maybe a different learning style or a more hands-on or project-based approach. And really what I think we have to keep in mind as parents and providers is that I'd love to change the name from school readiness to more just educational readiness, because we are ready for education really from the moment that we're born, and maybe even prenatally, all the way until we are, elderly and in retirement and always learning more and more. And so educational readiness means that we are learning and that we're taking in information in the way that we can best understand it, and that can facilitate our learning to our highest possible level for ourselves.
Yeah, and I understand that this is just one sign of a bigger and deeper issue that we're not trying to explore here. We're trying to provide context and explain this in a simple manner to our viewers who have never heard this before, or if they heard it, they are misunderstanding sometimes what it means or what it can mean. But what are the most common mistakes that parents make?
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question. So when we think about school readiness, I think one of the most common mistakes is parents think their child might go to school and they should have perfect behavior, meaning they're not going to get in trouble. They're going to follow every rule perfectly. And a lot of times, the best learning we have is when we make a mistake and we're getting some type of feedback for that, or the logical consequence. And so for parents, I want to really encourage you, as you think about school readiness, to be going to the school or the teacher that you might be having your child enroll with, and talk about what those expectations are. And is there room for a different learning style? Is your child, another great opportunity is your child emotionally ready to be in that setting for multiple hours per day? And I think one of those other we'll call them pitfalls too, that parents run into, is your child might really struggle separating from you, because as a parent or a caregiver, you've been with them that entire period of early childhood and they haven't been in a different setting. And that might make you think they're not ready to go to school, we should hold off another year. But in reality, it's that exposure and that separation that we really want to be able to foster, and for them to be able to gain that independence and autonomy when going to a school setting. And then I think the other thing as a parent and as a provider that I hear is we expect our kids to go to school and already have all these academic skills. They should be able to know their letters, write their name, know their colors. And again, it's an ongoing process of education and learning. And so if we're headed into a school setting and being school ready just means that we're ready to learn. It doesn't necessarily mean that we already have all of this core knowledge under our belts.
Just a little bit of an appendix question here. Quoting the AAP, they believe that kindergarten testing or screening should be used as a tool to guide curriculum and instruction and support diverse group of children rather than a gatekeeping test for children to enter school, which is a very scary thought. What are your thoughts on screenings or readiness tests for such small children?
This is one where I can say, I agree. They should be used to manage curriculum and help set up the right individualized supports for each child rather than a gatekeeping tool. Because really what we know is that in an educational setting, that education has to be tailored to a child's current level and they have to be fostered to get to the next level. And we don't want to prevent anyone from being enrolled in an educational setting based upon whether or not they pass a specific screening measure. So I agree that those measures should be utilized more for curriculum development and individualizing education, as opposed to that now is time or now is not the right time for that educational support.
Is it a way of knowing an average, like what is on average going on in schools? Like, is this something really common to have this assessment tests? Or most schools are actually offering a more holistic approach or providing at least different options tailored to the needs or the abilities of the child that enters the school.
It really is going to vary by the school. So the public school settings, those are opportunities for any child to be enrolled regardless of level. And so my hope is that none of those yes, no screening measures are happening there for enrollment and that everyone is coming in and getting that curriculum tailored to their individual abilities. Separately, private schools may have a specific entrance requirement because they don't have as much flexibility or have tailored their school to a specific curriculum or learning style. And so then they may be using these measures as gatekeeping measures to be able to make sure that the child's a good match for that educational curriculum or program that they have specific to the private school setting.
Yeah, and another question I have for you, if the school age is known to be between the ages of 4 and 5, what should be done at home or daycare before that age, just to be sure that our child is checking all the boxes to enter, let's say, a public or a private school situation?
So when you are in those early years in 1, 2, 3, 4, we really want to make sure that our kids have an enriched environment. So that means that we are not overutilizing screen time, that we are spending ideally less than an hour per day with a screen of any type, iPad or TV or otherwise. Being the only interaction that child's having. If we have a social environment, one that explores our senses, so we have toys that have touch related components, sound, they have the potential for a visual effect. Those are really important for our kids to have early on. And then exposure to those early learning concepts, such as recognizing colors, recognizing shapes, starting to explore pencils, paper, crayons, so that they're seeing that they can hold a pencil and then that has the outcome of a written, scribble on a page. And so it really is about enriched environment, making sure that we are talking back and forth with our children, engaging them, having those social activities, opportunities to run and play outside, all really important for setting our children up for success long term.
Going back to something that you mentioned, that it kind of brought back a memory of experiencing myself when I was little, which is the separation anxiety. And if I have a child that is intellectually and motor skill ready to face a school setting, but it's been home all the time or it's been with me all the time, how can we make this function? Like, is there any instances when this can be more progressive, or like you can do a couple hours at a time? And maybe this is something that parents don't know that maybe we can talk about.
Well, this is a great question too, because it happened during COVID when we had been isolated or at home for a long period of time and we hadn't been out, especially our younger kids, my son included, hadn't been to a grocery store. And so when he walked in, he was mesmerized by how much was there, or even to a restaurant for that matter. And so certainly if we have had separation challenges, if our children are crying, getting upset, sometimes not even willing to get out of the car to go into that setting, we really need to be able to help scaffold them and work them up to that. So that may mean just in the weeks leading up to school, driving to the school, showing them where the things are outside the school, walking into the school, showing them where their classroom will be, showing them where the playground will be, and then meeting the teacher, working up to each of those steps. Maybe as a parent, sometimes if you're allowed, even videotaping that so that you can review it with your child so that they can see it. Providing those coping strategies. So when we get upset, how can we calm our bodies down? We can take deep breaths. We can change the language that we use, right? If you're saying school's scary, well, school is exciting. School is new. Can we change some of the language around that? If it gets to the point where you're having really big challenges, big tantrums, lots of meltdowns, that's when we want to talk to our pediatrician or a therapist, because we may need to intervene with some more intensive work. But the goal as a parent is to not let that behavior allow our kids to avoid, right, doing what it is that we need them to do, because we're only going to be reinforcing the avoidance if we let them get out of it.
Right, it should not be a reason to hold them back, which brings the next question. Is there a way to understand or know why are there so many different cutoff dates in the country? And how, in your experience, how does this affect or has affected the child's education and development?
It's really interesting to see so many different cutoffs for age and enrollment in school. And sometimes what I've seen in my practice is when a student or a family moves states, it also creates a situation where sometimes they have to repeat the grade because of their age and because they don't qualify in that state they're moving to, because perhaps they're too young for that state, even though in the state they were just in, right, they were able to engage in that curriculum. And so there's certainly challenges with that. I don't have a great answer as to why that happens. I think it's just up to each group individually. But as a parent, one of the most important things to think about is we want to provide that enriching environment, and our kids are going to be in an educational setting for, quite a long time, from K through 12th grade and potentially longer for whatever path they choose after. And it's incredibly important to get them going to feel that sense of community in the school, to have those social contacts, the exposure to the curriculum. Now, as our children go through school, what we know is if they're struggling in a specific grade, sometimes parents ask me about repeating a grade, and we don't want to repeat a grade unless there is a change to the curriculum. So repeating a grade just to repeat a grade, of course they're going to get better, but we need to really understand why the challenges were there in the first place and ensure that a curriculum change will be made so that they can have a different learning format, a different curriculum, additional supports on that next repetition, because they're likely to need that moving forward.
Now to sort of dive into the challenging part of this, which can also be a possibility. When should a parent definitely hold their child back or allow or him or her more time before going into school and or repeat a grade, as you just said, which is a very common thing.
So in terms of holding your child back or considering waiting a year before enrolling in kindergarten, again, as a parent, you're the expert, but truly the more education and the more exposure that we can get our kids to that setting in a specific curriculum, whether that be in a homeschooling environment, a public school, or a private school environment, is what's most important. So thinking truly about, even though we may feel like they may not be ready for kindergarten, are they ready for a pre-kindergarten setting? Are they struggling with that behavior piece and the regulation? And do we need to consult with a professional to see if there is something else going on where we need to get supports or a different educational curriculum to best support them? So I will say that's up to the parent in terms of being ready. And I use that word ready for perhaps the kindergarten, but does that mean that we might be ready for pre-K and start gaining some of those skills at the half day level? And then whenever we're considering retention or holding back in grade, that has to be with a change in the educational curriculum that second time around. So if the school is not able to commit to that or isn't going to do that, then we don't want to be repeating a grade without a change to that curriculum to better support the learning on that next round.
What can we do as parents if we're trying to make the right decision for our child, and what resources are out there that are not necessarily known, as we were talking before the recording, that there is not an official guideline from the Department of Education or other official sources that can tell you what to do, basically, officially. Even when the American Academy of Pediatrics has a very comprehensive discussion on this that provides a very good idea. But anyway, what can a parent do if I'm a little unsure that my child may not be appropriate to a certain environment, whether it's because it's not ready yet or because it's too advanced in many ways? What can we do? Where can we go? Who can we ask about this?
One of the things we tend to do right away is search the web and get as many resources as possible. And sometimes you're going to find conflicting information there, or both negative and positive experiences from people relaying. So one of the most important things you can do is connect with people in your community. Are you able to connect with other parents potentially who've been in similar situations? I highly recommend connecting with parents who go to the school that you're planning to go to, whether that's where you're zoned to or a school that you're exploring. What have they seen? Have they had kids who have had challenges like yours? And talking to those school personnel as well. How do they handle that? And does the way that maybe they utilize challenging behavior discipline in the classroom coincide with how you parent? And do you feel like you could be good partners long term? So it really is about exploring that educational environment and also exploring those social contacts that you have to determine what might be the best option for your own child.
So this, going back to the question that sparked our research, our failed research, sort of say, because we could not answer the question, unfortunately. But should you hold your child back if they're on the age cusp for kindergarten?
Well, so it's a really challenging question. And as a parent, I know that we know our kids the best. And so exploring those avenues. But what we also sometimes see is that for younger kids who are on the cusp, who have slightly more impulsivity or activity level, they may have more disruptive behaviors in the classroom early on because they would have benefited from one more year, maybe in the pre-kindergarten setting. So really thinking about, as a parent, can we get them to a place where they can be successful in the educational setting, talking with the teachers about the behaviors, especially if they're on that cusp of the age range, within a week or two of that cutoff, because that might be a challenge and could be a reason to wait another year. But if you're, 9 months older than that age cutoff and overall you are doing well, then a great opportunity to get going with that education.
And just an extra question that came to my head just now. Can it be can it be helpful or sort of an advance to put our child in a daycare situation where they are educated or prepared, or having someone helping us to help us know by the time that our child reaches the age of 4 or 5, just right before kindergarten, just to know that it is in fact ready?
Exactly. And that's why our voluntary pre-kindergarten is available too across the United States. So thinking about enrollment either in a daycare, other preschool setting, your voluntary pre-kindergarten that's specific to your public school, because then you have that opportunity to almost do a trial run, right? And get an understanding of the expectations of being in the classroom, what it means to be a student in a classroom community, and what it's like to take in the curriculum in that setting too.
And I understand that the childcare is an issue in this country, and it's so expensive. And sometimes it's unaffordable for most people. Is there a specific set of activities or projects that home caregivers can absolutely do to provide the best they can do to have their children ready when they're ready for school?
So many resources available on the internet free of charge. So lots of printable worksheets, coloring guides, working on using scissors, hand-eye coordination, recognizing colors. Even I said an hour of screen time, but there's great apps for those early learning, for reading and math. So we have a host of free resources at our fingertips with the internet to be able to help guide that early learning at home.
Dr. Katzenstein, thank you so much. This was amazing. I think we covered a lot of things, and if not everything, but if there's anything that I didn't ask you that you think it's important and fundamental for our viewers to know or to understand.
I think that really it is a community. We need to come together with our social contacts, with our educators, with our professionals, and have these open conversations, because we've gotten away from that by relying on information on the internet and maybe people we don't know and the advice that they give as well. And I would love for our parents to feel empowered to come together, to have these conversations, and then make the choice for what's best for your child, because that at the end of the day is what's going to serve them the best long term.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Super nice to meet you.